Lori, I just want to say thank you so much for helping me launch the Being Brave podcast. I couldn't have done it without your help. You made it so easy. I kept putting it off, and you said, Karen, no, you can do it. And we came together, things that I thought the tech was going to be overwhelming, and you made it so simple. You walked me through each and every step. It's like having a girlfriend hold your hand to make it all happen, and I was scared to start it, and you just kept encouraging me and gave me the confidence to just keep taking that next best step. You made it so easy. You believed in me. And oh my gosh, it's been so fun and so exciting. And not only did you walk me through all the processes and help me set it up, you gave me the confidence to keep going. And you keep sending me just lovely messages, and I love it. So you're still there and encouraging me along the way. So thank you so much. I so appreciate you and for believing in me and helping me get the podcast out there to help celebrate 1 million women and their stories and voices.
Because we live in a society that really honors pushing and being tough and powering through things and doesn't really allow us to step into the more feminine qualities of receptivity and softness, unfortunately, when we push through those symptoms, they actually get worse.
Has your life, your dreams been interrupted? Good news. It is possible to reinvent our lives. People are doing it every day, and some are brave enough to share the struggles, disappointments, and challenges. If you are looking for a new beginning, a do-over, or to rediscover your passion, maybe even find a new one, then grab a cup of coffee and let's talk. Interrupted, Act 2, Reinventing Your Legacy, with your host, Coach Lori.
Carla Wainwright is a holistic wellness coach, but she is also a midlife alchemist. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really thrilled to be here.
That raises a lot of curiosity. Tell us, we always start with what you do and what you love about it before we go into your interruption. So just tell us what you do. You've had a couple big interruptions.
I did. Yeah, so I'm a holistic wellness coach, and as you said, a midlife alchemist, and my passion is serving women 40 plus to really feel amazing, feel great in their bodies, and also not just their bodies, but just in the becoming of who they are moving into, because I really do believe that midlife is a time of really powerful transformation, and what lies on the other side of menopause is actually the most potent and powerful time of a woman's life, but she needs support to get there. So, women are really experiencing a crisis in terms of their metabolic health. It's less than 7% of people are metabolically healthy. We have so much chronic disease and autoimmune conditions and all of these sorts of things. And we also find that women are really not feeling empowered to step into their voices and, their own beautiful truth. My role as the midlife alchemist is to support women in what I call the sacred metabolism, which is how you use energy. So energy in terms of what happens in the physical body, but also energy in terms of what happens in terms of what we don't see. So the more mystical and embodied side of that.
Well, that is so fascinating. And so many women my age, maybe a little younger, they're like, how come nobody told us about this? But it wasn't talked about in my day and age. I had no idea if I was going through it or not. I just pressed on and did what I had to do. What are some of the symptoms when you're really struggling with it?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say I love that perimenopause and menopause is having so much more visibility in the culture and the mainstream, because I think it's so important, because it's such a huge part of a woman's journey to kind of have it all shrouded in mystery and not really know what's happening. It can be very destabilizing. So perimenopause starts for many women even in their late 30s, but typically kind of 40s. And of course, hormones are shifting and changing. So we're experiencing decreases in estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, which has a huge number of effects on the body. So not only do we notice what's happening with our cycles, but also our mood, our sleep, our sense of well-being. It has massive impacts on our metabolic health because we become less insulin resistant, more subject to, ups and downs of blood sugar, more inflammation, all of these sorts of things. Because we live a very modern lifestyle, which has a lot of amazing things, of course, connected with our modern life, the amount of stress and the environments that we live in and the food we put in our body really makes it a whole lot harder. So a lot of women really struggle, and they really feel like they lose themselves because they don't feel well, they don't feel good in their bodies, they can't think properly, and it just all feels really overwhelming and hard to function.
It feels like perimenopause is a fairly new term, or at least it's talked about more. I don't ever remember hearing that when I was probably going through it. Is it new, or is it just we haven't talked about it?
I think it's probably, I don't think it's new. I think that it's always probably been recognized, but I think it's much more in the cultural conversation now. I think, we kind of saw menopause as this, well, of course it's a defining transition, but the process to get there is long. Like my perimenopausal journey was over a decade. It's a long time. I think we need to frame it as not just this moment in time where your cycle stops, but there's all of these things that are happening in advance of that, and a body that needs to be supported.
Yeah, I remember thinking that's all it was, is that's your mark of when it is and when it happens, and that's it. And then so many women talk about the hot flashes. And like you talk about mood, and then there's a lot of guilt and shame around it because they don't understand and they think, what's wrong with me?
Yeah, I think that we are taught that we just kind of have to push and power through it. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a lot of suffering and silence. And, the mood piece is huge. The brain fog piece is really huge. Yeah, there are all of these symptoms that, because we live in a society that really honors pushing and being tough and powering through things, and doesn't really allow us to step into the more feminine qualities of receptivity and softness, unfortunately, when we push through those symptoms, they actually get worse because our body's capacity to manage stress diminishes. That's one of the major effects of our estrogen declining, is that we had some neuroprotective benefits of estrogen related to all of these processes in the body that help us with our mood, help us with managing stress, decreasing cortisol. So suddenly something that kind of bothered you but wasn't a big deal becomes so insurmountable, and we blame ourselves rather than really understanding what's happening to us in our biology.
I love it that you said that, because one of your interruptions had to do with something that I am hearing so often: women that suffered sexual trauma. They had to buck up and be strong and push through. And now they're in this place where they're like trying to be so tough, and it's not serving them. And they haven't actually like dealt with the trauma. Can you talk about that?
Certainly, that was also my experience as a young person. And when you couple that with a lot of shame and secrecy, yeah, there certainly is this feeling that you just have to, quote, get over it. In my own experience, my body actually really didn't make that an option for me. So, I experienced 2 sexual assaults in my 20s that were massively destabilizing. And, I turned to food as a coping strategy, and I really just became completely numb in my body. And in addition to that, then, I started to experience a lot of anxiety. I was having panic attacks. I really got to this point where I was like, okay, I actually can't push through it. I can't function. I can't pretend this is not happening, because it was having such a major impact in my life. And so I really embarked on this healing journey. And as you probably saw in my bio, I'm trained as a wildlife biologist. I have a background in health sciences, was doing that work, and it was really wonderful work. Yet kind of living in that way wasn't supporting me. I was really just not able to, I was finding it harder and harder to kind of just function as I needed to. So I started on this health journey, began to just explore some of the more healing arts. So, yoga and qigong and tantra and embodiment and breath and all of those things. And I actually, before I started all those things, I was pretty dismissive of all of them. I was like, yeah, well, whatever. That's just, like, as we call it, woo-woo. But I had these really profound experiences when I allowed myself to receive them, of being able to feel my body for a moment, being able to let my breath drop from up in my collarbones into my belly, of being able to, in a moment where I was experiencing a panic attack, to resource myself and ground and just allow myself to come back to a baseline. And these experiences were so profound that I just basically was like, this is the path. I need to explore this more. I feel very fortunate that I was able to have those experiences that really illuminated and opened my mind, and they were so impactful for me. Then I wanted to provide those to other women so that they didn't have to suffer in the way that I did.
Yeah. And like you said, I think it's easy to pawn it off as woo-woo when we're hearing more and more about breath work. And I worked with homeless ladies, and they would come into our day center and they'd be so stressed out sleeping on the street, and we just have them do the 4x4 breathing, which seemed so ridiculous, but it just calmed them down. Then we give them coffee, which would wake them up, but it really, when you think about breathing and drinking water, those things that are so basic, and how actual healing they are.
The human mind does tend towards complexity, and we sort of revere complexity, but simple is often the most powerful and the most effective, right? There's this saying that less is more. It's often the truth.
Yeah. So you walked away from this career of wildlife into yoga and the healing arts, and then you had another interruption.
That path was really beautiful, and I created an incredible career out of it. I had a yoga studio for 22 years. I led retreats, women's retreats. I also studied as a sexual awakening facilitator, because one of the things that I really recognized is that your sexual energy, especially for women, this is our creative life force energy. I mean, we can create life, but it's all the other things we create. And when we've had sexual trauma, that gets shut down. So I was really interested in how can we bring that back to life? Because this is such an integral part of a woman's capacity and what she can actually do in the world. So for a long time I did that. And then as I moved into my own perimenopausal journey, even though I was living what seemed like a very healthy lifestyle, I've always been very mindful about food and interested in, exercise and movement. As I was dealing with perimenopausal symptoms that, were quite disruptive in my life, I also had some blood work which really showed me that I was not as metabolically healthy as I had assumed. It was a pretty big wake-up call. I was like, wow, okay. I mean, one of the things that contributed to that was sugar addiction that I'd had for many, many years. It was a coping strategy as a young person, and then, after the trauma, also became a coping strategy. Even though I have a slim build, I still ate way too much sugar, had very dysregulated blood glucose. This was a bit of a wake-up call where I was like, okay, so I'm doing all of these embodiment pieces, I'm doing all these things in the healing arts, but it's not enough. And I need to come back to my science roots and really support my body with what we know about your metabolism and how to be more metabolically healthy, how to optimize and feel really great in this body. So it was almost like a full circle moment where I returned back to my scientific roots, merged these two paths together, and there's incredible, it just feels so enlivening to me to really approach your metabolism as something as sacred. You have the physical, but you also have the energetic. And in my experience with myself and then with my clients, when we address the body in this complete holistic way, really incredible things can happen.
What was it again that made you recognize that? It was the blood work?
The blood work was part of it. It was also my symptom. Stress is always, for many women, I've always struggled with stress and anxiety, and then that was really ramping up. My sleep was going out the window, all of these things, and I was like, I feel like I'm doing the right things, like I'm meditating and I'm, doing yoga and I'm moving and I'm eating relatively well, but the confirmation of the blood work, when I just saw some certain markers, I was like, okay, now wait a second. I didn't realize this was happening, and I have to adjust things so that I can actually really support my body. And when I started doing that, it was a game changer.
Maybe you could reflect on this. Until we have something happen that kind of stops us in our tracks, we don't really pay attention to it. We might, like you say, eat healthy, do yoga, exercise. But when it comes to that kind of more scientific hormones, all of that, it seems like it takes a lot more for us women to recognize something's going on.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that in many ways it's like somewhat of a more modern phenomenon. Like, so even 20 or 30 years ago, I don't think that the impact, or I would say that there were more people who were metabolically healthy and not experiencing symptoms as big as women are now. So, we live in the most toxic time in history. The level of stress that we experience day to day, I'm not sure if you feel like this, but it feels like like it's going up and up every year. Like, it's just crazy. There's a perception that there's so little time for presence, or we've become uncomfortable with stillness, or we just don't have any practice at it. This human body evolved over millions of years, but what we're experiencing now in this modern life has happened in such a short period of time, and the body isn't able to adapt to it. So sometimes it is like, it is having something like blood work, and amazing that we can actually test for things and get clarity, that really it's like, okay, I'm feeling this, but now I have confirmation that something actually is happening within me, and now I'm inspired to do something about it.
So are there emotional clues? Like I remember when my mom was going through menopause and all the women laughed because they hated their husbands. Like, but they knew it was menopause, that they hated him, they just hated him. They couldn't do anything right. And like I'd hear him say, yeah, the doctor says this will pass, but if you're hating your husband, it's probably menopause. So are there emotional things that people feel now that would clue them in to, hey, I should talk to a coach like you, or go to the doctor?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that no matter what, perimenopause is a journey. There's very few women who go through it symptom free. There are some, and they're incredibly lucky. But the vast majority of women absolutely do have symptoms. So some of the things that I think are important to take note of, first of all, is sleep. So sleep is so important. I think sleep it's a spiritual practice. It's one of the things I prioritize the most in my life, because if you don't sleep well, everything is hard. Like everything in your day, your relationships, your job, taking care of yourself, focus, everything. So yes, sleep disruptions are absolutely something that happens in perimenopause, but you will know when you get to a threshold where this just is not sustainable anymore, for sure. And I would also say, if you notice that you're really having a hard time managing stress, that is also a good clue. And what's interesting and to realize is that for many women in perimenopause, a lot of their old trauma symptoms begin to resurface. And part of the reason that happens, a large reason actually, is because we are less insulin sensitive. And so when the body is going through these big like movements of blood sugar, like highs and lows and highs and lows, it mimics panic or trauma in the body, and the body thinks that something is happening to it. And so very often then that will trigger past experiences and memories and reactions. So that is also something very much to pay attention to understand that your body is actually asking for more support because it's perceiving a threat.
Wow. I've always wondered about that because with the trauma that I suffered as a child, it was later in life I got counseling, because it really, when I started in counseling, they're like, this is new. No, we have, we're just getting trained to understand this kind of thing. And so I feel like I've done a lot of work, but it is amazing to me that certain things will still activate some of that trauma. And I recognize it now, and I know how to get safe and feel safe. But it is interesting to me that it's not like it just goes away. There's levels of it. And to be aware of that, we might be behaving really, feels really weird. And it might be the perimenopause, but that it's activating something else from before.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the body is so incredible. It holds on to experiences, I mean, traumatic ones, but also beautiful ones as well. And so, there's a really deep, somatic body memory and all of these different layers. And so, it isn't unusual that things surface at a later point in life. And in some ways, we're hopefully more equipped to dive into the healing at that time. So I think that the body has an innate wisdom, and that's part of what I really teach women, is to tap into that inner wisdom, like what is happening in the body and what's it trying to say to you. And so, on the one hand, yes, we might be experiencing, this remembrance of trauma, and at the same time, the body is saying, okay, you're ready. Let's address this so you can move into more ease.
Yeah. And I love it that women are having more conversations. As an entrepreneur, I've been in so many like networking groups where you kind of get to know the ladies, and it's always about business, but once in a while it'll be about family, because we don't really want to let people think we're not doing well if we want them to hire us. So I'm seeing that in my networking groups, the women, well, we're all about the same age, and we're talking about it. And there's such a freedom there, because it's like, oh, we're all dealing with this. This doesn't affect my production or what I do for a living. But getting that support is, whether you get it in your business group or you go to a support group, it just seems so valuable.
Absolutely. I mean, we're human beings having a human experience. And personally, I, would always want to work with someone who can actually relate to the trials and tribulations of life. They might, the circumstances will look different, but there'll be an understanding. And so, it's so interesting how I think Brene Brown says, vulnerability is the first thing we look for in people, but it's the last thing that we show anyone, right? So, I think this speaks perfectly to this idea that, like, we're actually looking for that heart connection of, like, yeah, I see you and you see me.
In fact, one of the things I do is I teach podcasting. And the reason I do it is because stories are so important. And it's not like the story. Like, I love how you said, well, I've had a few interruptions. Our story isn't one big story. It's hundreds of little stories. I know that I work a lot with women in recovery, and once they kind of get clean and sober and get their life, they don't want to really talk about that, but yet they go to a meeting, someone's, they're off the street, and they say, when I was in jail and now I've got this job, and the person coming off the street is like, there's hope. Not all stories are fun to tell, especially if there's been jail or things like that. But they do help support others, because so many times if we have things in our life and we keep them secret, that affects us physiologically as well.
Yes. I mean, secrets can be very toxic to the body. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And one of the other things is, this wasn't my experience, but some people they're going through like menopause. They've got teenagers and they've got elderly parents.
That's me.
Oh, you want to talk about that? Because that's a real thing.
Yeah, it is. It feels almost like a perfect storm. So this is one of the things about women having children later in life. I had my kids in my early 30s. I have twin girls that are 18 now. But, as I was going through perimenopause, they were getting their periods. And so... all these things happening kind of at the same time. And my parents, who have since passed away, were quite unwell for a long period of time. And so when my kids were still at home, I was traveling every month, about it, like a plane ride. It'd take me all day to get there, and I would spend a week with my parents and then come back, and just trying, and also being, self-employed and entrepreneur. And it was beyond overwhelming. My mother just passed away actually in April, and I'm still feeling like I'm in that really tender phase of recovery and rebuilding, because as women, we're nurturers, and of course we want to be there as in every way possible for our children, and then also for our parents who need us. Mm-hmm. And it's the sandwich generation. It is a real challenge, and I have so much empathy for anyone listening who's in that position. And what I really recommend is that you speak with others, just like we were talking about, who are in the same boat, because there are so many emotions. Like, there's anger that comes up, resentment that comes up, overwhelm that comes up. And it's really important to have someone that you can talk to about that, because this is real. Like, caregiver burnout is a huge thing. And I think that when we do that in silence, or we think that we have to be the superhuman woman who can do it all, and with a smile on her face, and have dinner ready by 5:30 and all the things, it's not realistic, and we really suffer as a consequence of that. So my own experience was, it was tremendous, the hardest period of my life. was really navigating, still having kids at home and dealing with my parents who were unwell, not in the same city. So yes, very hard.
Yeah. The thing I think about is, well, I think of when people go through trauma or loss and all of a sudden they like don't know what to do. And so I think about women that are in these positions like the sandwich, or they're experiencing the perimenopause. They don't maybe think to go to their doctor. What are best first next steps for somebody struggling?
Yeah, for someone struggling, absolutely. So the first thing is to just acknowledge that you're struggling and it's okay to ask for help. So,
That's hard.
it
I
is
think
hard.
that's
It
the
is
hardest
hard.
thing. Yeah.
And it's okay to ask for help, and actually asking for help shows incredible strength and resilience. So, maybe it's your doctor if you have a really good relationship with that person. Maybe it's a coach, maybe it's a friend, and just being really honest and open about what's happening. I think there's a lot of different resources that women can reach for, and my suggestion always is, what the most important thing is momentum, and just layering small doable pieces on top of each other so that we can build capacity. Most women don't need one more thing, but they do need support. And so finding someone who can help you with that and really listen, like I know here in Canada, our healthcare system, it's not designed for a doctor to actually sit down with you and have, an in-depth conversation. You get one symptom, you're allowed to talk about, in and out, bang, you're done. Might be different where you are, but that might be helpful, but it may not be exactly what you need. Like, women need space. They need somebody who can hold a container and listen to them, have empathy, and then help with those next small incremental doable steps so that she can start to reclaim herself in her body and her being.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of times too, it goes back to that evil self-talk when we're trying to push through and we're trying to do it all, and we're beating ourselves up for not being able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, we're our own worst critics. We're so hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And if we heard a girlfriend talking like that, we'd be like, how dare you? And yet we do it to ourselves. Yeah. I noticed in your, when I was looking through your website, you have a freebie. It's what was it?
It's called a vibrancy guide.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so that's also a great first step. So the Vibrancy Guide has five different areas in your life that you can make these small incremental steps towards feeling great in your body. And so because I really look at things from this holistic perspective, some of the things have to do with the food that we're taking in, or maybe like when is the best time to eat, how can you reduce some of those blood sugar spikes, how can you get a better sleep. And then there are other pieces around embodiment, connecting with the wisdom of your body. And I'll also share that pleasure is such a big part of the work that I do. And I think pleasure is our birthright, and pleasure is so important for all of us to experience, but particularly women, because we can have a lot of stories and shame around pleasure. And pleasure is the antidote to stress. Physically, like biochemically in our body, when we experience pleasure, it releases oxytocin, and oxytocin reduces cortisol. So not only do we have an experience that feels nice, we're actually really changing the biochemistry within ourselves so that we can be more resilient and that we can just feel more vibrant in our bodies. So that particular guide is a great place to start. Everything is super doable. There's some of my favorite tips. And as I said, this is the way that you start to feel really, really good in your body.
If somebody wanted to work with you, what's the best way to reach you?
Well, they should download the Vibrancy Guide, and that takes you to my website. I offer 45-minute free one-on-one calls with zero pressure, zero obligation. I love connecting with women and just having a conversation and finding out, their stories and what they need. And then we just talk about whether we're a good match to work together. Lots of info on my website.
Well, this has been so great. And before we go, well, two things. Do you have a book or a podcast or YouTube channel?
So I used to have a podcast. It was called The Radical Sex Witches. It was a lot of fun. So if you're looking for those kind of like fun, pleasurable moments, encourage you to check that out. Right now, I'm actually focusing on getting on other podcasts. And so I do have a page on my website. I actually set myself a personal challenge to be on 100 podcasts in 12 months.
Before we go, what is it that you really want us to know?
Oh, I really want you to know that you are worth it and to never give up on yourself. And that you may have moments where you are feeling defeated or just it's so hard to get through the day. But know that your body is incredible and your body is designed to heal and to be vibrant and to feel amazing. And so never, ever give up on yourself. Just take one tiny step at a time and everything that you desire for yourself can absolutely come to pass.
I love that. And I think the thing that I keep hearing is get support. Ask for help.
Yes. We are not meant to do it alone. That's, humans are not meant to be an island into themselves. We're not meant to do things alone, and being supported by others and community is just so, so important and so valuable.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having this conversation with me.
If you love this podcast, here's a big ask. Will you share with your friends and family, subscribe, give us a review, and a 5-star rating so that others looking to reinvent their lives will be able to get the help they're looking for? Thank you in advance.